Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Manitoba Agriculture Crop Talk webinar. If you have any questions today, please type them into the Q&A icon located on the bottom toolbar, and we'll answer them at the end of each presentation. This webinar is being recorded, and you will receive a link to the recording. Thank you.
Thanks, Laurie. I'd like to welcome everybody to the September 27th edition of Crop Talk. Boy, the month has gone by fast, and we see a lot of harvest being done in the last 2 weeks here, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But we definitely see a lot of fields being done, and a lot of crop in the bins. So right now, a lot of people are refocusing their attention on maybe getting some preparing for the 24 crop and getting fields ready for next year. So thought it'd be a good time to get Kim to come on and talk about some of our fall weed control options, things we should be looking for when we're out scouting our fields. It's a good opportunity to do that. A lot of soil sampling being done right now, so it'd be good to drive around, take a look at what's happening in your field and seeing what you do need to get done for next year's crop, because every field's going to have a different situation. So definitely get out there and take a look around. So with that, I'm going to give the screen over to Kim, and let's look at some fall weed control.
Do you want to unmute yourself, Kim? I think you're still on mute.
Okay, unmute.
There you go.
There. Okay, just let me know when you can see that.
Just need to go to full screen.
We're
Perfect.
Okay, sorry. Apologies, everybody. I've been having a little bit of issues today, and hopefully this works. If not, Lionel will take over and we'll try to do it another way. Okay, so fall weed control, you know, we've had some quite early harvest gone on already. And so some of these fields have been harvested for weeks and weeks now, which is a good thing when we're talking about fall weed control, because we want to give those weeds time to regrow. But again, we know we have weeds that we regrow that were, you know, cut off at harvest, either through swathing or through combining. But we also have some weeds that do germinate in the fall as well. So we want to get after those weeds. We have no idea what we're looking at going into the winter when it comes to moisture. I think we're still relatively dry when we're looking at our soil profile, especially deep down in the soil profiles. So we don't want a lot of weeds using up that precious soil moisture. If we get, you know, some more fall rains and some good snow cover, you know, that won't be as much of an issue. But right now we are fairly dry, and we do not want these weeds using up valuable moisture and nutrients as well. So we want to make sure we do a good job on weed control this fall to set everything up well for the spring. So again, talking of some of the weeds that we're talking about, kochia, lots and lots of kochia right now in lots of fields. It's just getting worse and worse. It's probably our #1 weed across the province. And so we know these are issues that we have to deal with because it can germinate really early in the spring. And, you know, we do have some good sized plants out there still. Red root pigweed, all of the pigweeds can germinate quite early, can germinate late in the fall. Sorry, they can germinate quite early in the spring, but they do germinate late in the fall and can set seeds. So again, we don't want that happening, especially when we're talking about water hemp. This is a picture of some small water hemp plants. That's my hand in that picture from maybe a week or two ago, maybe 2 weeks ago. So those have recently germinated. Those are very small. Those are setting seed. They won't set very many seed, but we know with the water hemp populations that we've been finding in the province, they are all resistant. So to glyphosate, to group 2s, to group 5s, to group 14s. Those are the only tests we're doing, so we don't know what else they're resistant to. But we do know they are coming in with resistance already. And so the picture there with my hand, we see some recently germinated. And then here on the right, you can see where my pointer is. This is actually in wheat stubble. And this is some regrowth of some water hemp that was in that wheat crop, and it is regrowing, but there will be some new germination going on in that crop as well. So this is something that I'm, you know, if you suspect, or some of our areas that we have seen a bit of water hemp in them this year, You need to make sure you're doing a really good job of fall weed control. Again, these plants here on the right-hand side are pretty small, or sorry, on the left-hand side on my hand, they're very small, but they will set some seeds. And even if it's 20 or 30 or 50 or 70 seeds, those are all going to make a resistant plant if they all grow. And then in some of our crops too, where those weeds have been cut off and they are regrowing, they'll regrow from below where they were cut, and they will still set seeds. So that's something that we're really concerned about. And other weeds, of course, foxtail barley. We know like that's a perennial. So of course our fall weed control is the best time to go after some of our perennials. Even lamb's quarters, we've got lots of lamb's quarters in fields and they can regrow as well. So again, these are some of the things that we're looking at. Some of the fields that have been harvested already, if we've got regrowth, we always seem to have lots of lamb's quarters show up around harvest time. And whether or not we can get those weeds with the fall pass just depends on how much regrowth we can get from them. So for fall weed control, again, the usual suspects are perennials, our thistles, our dandelions, our quackgrass. So we want to go after perennials in the fall. Basically, any time from September on is a really good time to go after perennials. Sometimes we do a decent job with a pre-harvest application, but really, if you haven't been able to do that, or even after a pre-harvest application in that same crop, if we do have some regrowth on those weeds, this is a really good time to go after perennials. Also, this is winter annual season as well. So basically, a winter annual is something that germinates in the fall and goes dormant over the winter and then pops up first thing in the spring and is able to start growing basically before anything else does. And so it's robbing nutrients and moisture, and they're really hard to get out of with an in-crop spray because they're usually so big. By the time we get around to doing those in-crop sprays, they're far too large to control. So we're looking at weeds here like narrow-leaved hawksbeard, nightfly catchfly, white cockle, cow cockle, those type of things, stinkweed cleavers. And annuals, again, some of our annuals, like I said, I'm concerned about our pigweeds because we are seeing, more resistance in even just our red root pigweed. A lot of that is group 2 resistant now, and we don't want those setting seed at all. And then, of course, something like our water hemp, which, those are annual weeds. Those ones I'm concerned about. Some of our other weeds, if they're already going to set seed, not really much you can do about those this fall. If they're going to set seed and those seeds are viable, there's not a lot you can do about it. But again, the ones we are concerned about are those pigweed species, particularly the water hemp. So when is the best time to do fall weed control? You need to allow for regrowth after harvest, ideally 4 to 6 weeks if possible. That's a long time. So that doesn't always happen, but basically you need to have green growing tissue. So 4 leaves minimum, or maybe 6 inches across for some of our perennial weeds. It depends. You just need to have a weed that's growing well enough to take up the product you're going to spray on it. So you can start to spray perennials now. You can wait a little longer for winter annuals to get all that emerge. So basically, we need to be watching the weather. You look at the weather network or your weather forecasting app for the next week or so. It looks good. We've got decently warm nights. We're not getting close to a frost yet, but we need to be watching those temperatures. Make sure we're spraying if the frost is imminent, which, we've got away with it till now. We're almost to October and we still haven't had a really hard killing frost yet across the province. We've had little bits of frost here and there, but hasn't been that bad yet. And so again, if we get into even mid-October, that gives us a lot of time, but you need to make sure you get that weed control done if you want to put those products on before we get that killing frost. So basically temperatures, and we've talked about this earlier too, that temperatures need to be above 8 degrees for a few hours after application. So mid-morning or early afternoon is your best time to do your application. Again, after a frost, some of us in the province have had light frosts, so we need to evaluate. Now those were a while ago, but still, the weather can change. So again, watch for when these frost events are coming. So basically, is the leaf tissue still green and pliable? And you need to have about 60% of the leaf tissue alive. So we can spray quite late in the fall, even after some light frosts, we still can spray, but you need to have living plants to be able to take up those products. And after a frost, you need to wait 2 to 3 days and assess. Some of our smaller weeds, if they turn, they'll be very wet looking and black looking, and within a day or two, you know that they're not worth spraying anymore. Some of the bigger weeds, you need to give it time to see whether or not it's worth spraying those. So products, basically when you're spraying any type of product that you're trying to get down into the root system, you need to wait at least 3 days longer if possible before doing any tillage. And this allows those systemic products to translocate into the roots. And glyphosate, low rates don't cut it if there's very little leaf material. So depending on the weeds and depending on how much leaf material it is, you need to bump those fall rates up. And there is a variety of tank mix products. So we're going to start to talk about some of the products now. And most of these are either recommended or must be sprayed with glyphosate. So this is just, you know, an overview. So check our guide to crop protection and always check the label and make sure that, you know, you've got the most recent information. So Distinct is a really great product to use in the fall. That's a combination of dicamba, which is a group 4, plus diflufenzapyr, which is a group 19. Using the 40-acre rate, it gets, you know, lots of weeds. I've just listed a few of them here, just the ones that we're most interested in this fall. Our kochia, our roundleaf mallow, our Canada thistle, our dandelion, our pigweeds, our water hemp, biennial wormwood, volunteer canola. So that's, you know, some there, but lots more on the label. So take a look at that. So our spring crops, if we're spraying by October 1st, you've got a lot of crops you can still spray in the spring, or sorry, still plant in the spring. Wheat, barley, oats, canary seed, corn, canola, field peas, and soybeans. But if it's after October 1st, but still before October 15th, you can still plant wheat, barley, oats, canary seed, and corn. So basically that's because there would just be too much residue left behind from a late spray, and that might affect your spring seeded crops, some of your more sensitive crops. So you have to watch your dates on a lot of these products that I'm going to be talking about. You have to watch the date that you need to spray by. Again, here, sorry, my picture is a little bit blurry, but weed control in the spring following a previous September application, Distinct plus glyphosate plus merge. So make sure when you're using when you're tank mixing with glyphosate, you still need that merge, and does a really, really great job. So I like that product. When we're looking at Express SG, this is an older product. You know, tribenuron's been around for a very long time. It's a group 2 product. Now, I'm going to talk specifically about brand names here. There are other products out there. You need to check labels to make sure that your generic products, your generic tribenurons, are registered for all the same uses. And so you need to contact those companies and check those labels. But I'm just going to be talking about the FMC products like Express SG. So the 80-acre rate gets you really good control on narrowleaf hawksbeard, dandelion, flickweed, cowcockle, volunteer canola, lamb's quarters, wild buckwheat. And for spring crops, if you spray by October 1st, which is, you know, approaching very quickly, that's most, you can still seed most crops, including forages, but after October 1st, not canola, corn, and flax. And so contact your sales rep on that one and just make sure, you know, that you're setting yourself up well on that one. This is a great product. And again, I know we have a lot of group 2 resistance in the province. So some of these weeds they could be group 2 resistant. I'm not as concerned with spraying a group 2 in the fall because a lot of these weeds, hopefully winter will kill them anyways. It's just in the spring, you don't want to be using a group 2 product alone, even techniques with glyphosate, because we do have a lot of glyphosate resistant weeds as well. But in the springtime, you don't want to be spraying a group 2 by itself without a tech mix partner of a different group, just because we do have a lot of group 2 resistance in the province. Express FX, this is again another FMC product, and this is tribenuron, so that group 2, but now we have dicamba in there, which is a group 4. So talking about the 80-acre rate, and we've got dandelion, kochia, cleavers, narrowleaf hawksbeard, flickweed, Russian thistle, and wild buckwheat, other weeds as well, but I've just highlighted maybe some of the ones you're concerned about this fall. Again, we've got to watch the dates on this one. If you're spraying by October 1st, in the spring, you can plant wheat, barley, oats, corn, canola, lentils, soys, white beans. But after October 1st, again, you're limited to just the cereals there. Express Pro, I like this one. This is 2 group 2s. This is tribenuron and then metsulfuron, which some of you know as Ally. That's another group 2. So again, it's a tank mix product, but there's 2 products in here, but they're both group 2s. And so again, the 80-acre rate, with that metsulfuron in there, you're going to get some extended control for another 15 days or so. But so when you're spraying in the fall, you'll get a little bit of control in the spring, which is good. But so we're looking at, again, the usual suspects: dandelion, narrowleaf hawksbeard, cleavers, volunteer canola, wild buckwheat. And again, so if you apply late in the season, you'll get some control in the spring of those weeds as well. So your spring crops here are limited to your cereals, your wheat, barley, and oats, because of that extended control coming from that metsulfuron. So here's a nice, I like this picture of Express Pro Pro plus glyphosate versus a competitor. So that ally really, really heats it up, and you get really good burn down on some of these on some of these weeds by adding that ally. And again, I know it's another, they're both group 2s. We do have to watch our group 2 resistance. So obviously if you've got some group 2 resistant weeds, that's not going to work for you. But I am a fan of using these in the fall, because if we do have those resistant weeds, then winter will kill them, and hopefully they don't grow again in the spring. Not that same plant anyways, others will grow. So again, this is just a table from FMC, just talking about Express SG, sorry, and then FX, and then Express Pro. Now this is when they're tank mixed with glyphosate. So this is the modes of action. We've got a group 2 and a group 9. With Express FX, we've got 3 modes of action now, a 2, a 4, a 9. And then Express Pro, again, still just 2 group 2s, but with that ally in there, you get that extended control. So that's a really great product ahead of cereals. Does a really good job. And here's, the crops for spring recropping following a fall application. Lots of products when you're using Express. Again, you just have to watch, if they're applied prior to October 1st. But you have to watch your canola, your flax, and your field corn. We can't seed those in the spring if you apply after October 1st. But if you get that on in the next few days, you've got a lot of options in the spring. When you're looking at Express FX with dicamba, your options are a little bit more limited. And again, with that October 1 deadline, we lose a few crops. But then with Express Pro, there's really no deadline on that, but you're limited to just your spring cereals there. Again, it's good products. In Truvix, this is Express FX basically plus carfentrazone. So that carfentrazone is a group 14. That's what you'd known as AIM. And so you get that added burn off from the carfentrazone. So for spring crops, it's basically the same as the Express FX label. So again, if by October 1 you have a lot of leeway in here, but after October 1st, you're just looking at your wheat, your barley, and your oats in the spring. Blackhawk, this is another group 14. This is pyriflufen, which is just a contact herbicide. So you're just getting contact on that. So similar to AIM, and plus 2,4-D, which is a group 2. So you've got 2 modes of action in here. It's a 60-acre rate, lots of broadleaf weeds, but they do need to be quite small. And with spring crops, you basically have no restrictions. So take a look at that label, take a look at that product page in our guide, and refer to the label. And so you've got a lot of options when you're using Blackhawk in the fall. Paradigm Pre, which has been around for a long time, but these are still really great products. And so basically in front of cereals. And so we've got haloxafen, which is a group 4, plus fluorosulam, which is a group 2. So we've got 2 modes of action in there, 60 acres per jug rate. And you've got lots of weeds in here that you'd be concerned about in the fall. So your dandelion, your volunteer canola, your shepherd's purse, your chickweed, cleavers, cowcockle, night flower and catchfly, canna thistle, you get suppression on that. Sow thistle, you get suppression, perennial sow thistle suppression as well. Smartweed and kochia, light infestations. Again, haloxafen is not a great kochia product, and we know all of our kochia is group 2 resistant. And again, when we're mixing with glyphosate, a lot of our kochia is glyphosate resistant as well. So again, this is not a product that's going to do great when you've got lots and lots of kochia, but on light infestations, haloxafen does a little bit on kochia, but it is not my go-to kochia product, and it shouldn't be. It's not anybody's go-to kochia product. So spring, this is a spring crops. Basically, anytime this is applied after August 1st, it has to be only just spring cereals, so wheat, barley, oats. Looking at Pre-Pass XC and Flex, and this is just straight fluorosulam plus glyphosate. And so that's an 80-acre jug rate on the Flex, and then the XC is a 40 acres per case rate. And so you're looking at chickweed, cowcockle, dandelion, volunteer canola, smartweed, wild buckwheat, cleavers, and kochia. Again, kochia only if it would be group 9, if that glyphosate would work on it, because we do know that our kochia is it is all group 2 resistant in Manitoba, and a good proportion of it is glyphosate tolerant as well. So we've got to watch the kochia on this one, but it would still work on some populations if they weren't glyphosate resistant. So spring crops, if after October 1st, then only wheat, barley, and oats on this one. Corex 2, another good product to be using in the fall. You've got dicamba plus fluorosulam in there, so you've got a group 4 and a group 2, so you've got a nice tank mix in there with 2 modes of action. It's a 56 acres per case rate, and then you're looking at, in this case, you're going to pick up your dandelion, your perennial sow thistle, your kochia, your cleavers, your volunteer canola, wild buckwheat, chickweed, cow cockle, smartweed, stinkweed. You know, you're going to pick up some kochia, the kochia in there. If you've got group 2 resistant kochia, well, that group 4 is going to work on that. And also it'll do a good job on your pigweeds as well, especially if you've got any red root pigweed or any water hemp as well. The dicamba is a good product for that. And for spring crops, if after October 1st, then of course, or sorry, August 1st, sorry, then only your cereals, your wheat, barley, oats. So that's just a cereal product to be used ahead of cereal. Smolder, this is newer from BASF. This is a really great product, does a really good job ahead of cereals. And so the saflufenicil, which is group 14, that's also, you'd know that as heat. And also metsulfuron, which is a group 2. Again, that's at ally. So you're going to get some extended control coming from that group 2 portion in here. So with it's that 80 acres per case rate, you're looking at a lot of weeds in here. You're looking at kochia, cleavers, Canada fleabane does a really good job on Canada fleabane. We're starting to see more and more of that in the fall in the fields here. Lamb's quarters, wild buckwheat, wild mustard, stinkweed, red root pigweed, dandelion, canna-thistle, roundleaf mallow, narrowleaf toxbeard, and volunteer canola. So that's going to do a really good job on all of your volunteer canolas as well. And for spring crops, again, only in front of cereals. When we're looking at now, I'm switching gears a bit here. Just these next 3 products I'm going to talk about. These we want you to spray as late as possible. So the other products that we're spraying, you know, anytime from September on, and you know, we want to target those. We want to get those weeds while they're growing. But these are products that work on soil. They're soil activated, and we want to make sure that they are on as late as possible because we basically want them to start working in the spring. If you do have some emerged weeds that are up, and at the same time you're spraying, even though you're going very late, you still could throw in some glyphosate if you wanted to. But again, the idea behind these next 3 products is a late fall application. This is basically the last thing you do before you put the sprayer away. So Valterra is flumioxazin. That's a group 14. It requires minimum a 1/4 inch moisture to activate, but spring snowmelt will activate it early. So that's the advantage of putting these products on. We do have some really great pre-products. And when we use them in the spring, we run into that risk that we will not get the moisture to activate them. And that has happened in the last number of years. That has happened across the province in different places just with our lack of spring rainfall. So using these in the fall, we know we're going to get some level of snow this winter. We don't know how much, but we're going to get some. And so we know that spring snow melt will be enough to activate it. So again, this is going to target your early germinating weeds like your kochia, your chickweed, your dandelion, you know, that's coming from seed, your volunteer canola. There's a lot of other weeds it targets as well, but particularly you're going to get that. If conditions are good, you'll get 6 to 8 weeks of residual control off of these products, this Valterra and the next couple that I'm going to talk about. Again, this has to be the last pass across the field. You wait as late as possible to go. If there are still weeds that you feel you need to control at that point, you can add glyphosate and surfactant. Because this is not going to work. This works on weeds as this is a pre-product, so it works on weed seeds as they germinate. In spring crops, basically the spring crops that you could seed after a fall application would be soys, field pea, and spring wheat, but that's minimum till fields only, field corn. Also establish dormant alfalfa for seed or hay or other forages, but you need to seed deep. So if you're doing soys, they need to be at least 1.5 inches deep following a Valterra application in the fall or the spring, and wheat needs to be at least 1 inch as well. So these products can be used in the spring as well, but they do have a fall application, which is, takes some of that guesswork out of the spring, whether or not, you're worried about whether you're going to get that moisture or not to activate it. So our next product is Fierce. And again, these first 2 products are New Farm products. And so this is flumioxazin, which is basically Valterra that we just talked about. That's a group 14 plus pyroxasulfone, which is a group 15. So this is a nice mix. You've got 2 modes of action in here. But because of that pyroxasulfone, you need a little bit more moisture. So again, we need a minimum 1/2 inch of moisture to activate, but we know we're going to get that with the spring snowmelt. Again, this one, it's a little more iffy in the spring. If we get those rains, it works really, really well. If we don't get the rains, the product just doesn't get activated. So again, we're targeting early germinating weeds like kochia, wild mustard, volunteer canola, foxtail barley will get suppression, wild oats we get suppression, and downy and Japanese brome we get suppression as well. And that grass control is coming from that pyroxasulfone, that group 15. That's also a good pigweed product as well. So But again, if some weeds have emerged, you can add glyphosate and a non-ionic surfactant. This needs to be the last pass across the field. This is the last thing you do before you park the sprayer, and then it's your setup for spring. Your spring crops are soys, field pea, spring wheat, and field corn. You can put this on prior to seeding winter wheat. I know we're past the crop insurance deadlines. I know some people do end up putting winter wheat in quite late. Not sure, I'm not recommending that, but again, but it needs to be minimum 7 days prior to seeding and in minimum and no-till soils only. And you need to seed deep. Again, same as with the Valterra product, soys need to be at least 1.5 inches in the ground, and wheat needs to be at least 1 inch in the ground come spring if you've put Fierce on in the fall. And then our last product here is Focus. This is an an FMC product, sorry. So this is pyroxasulfone, which we just talked about. That's group 15, and carfentrazone, which is group 14. So again, you've got a group 14 and a group 15 here. So you've got a good mix in this. You've got a good tank mix product here. Sorry, not a tank mix product. It's a multiple mode of action product. Carfentrazone, again, that's AIM. And so, but this again requires that minimum 1/2 inch to activate. And, we should have enough spring snow melt to do that. So again, great product to use in the spring as well, but we have to have that moisture, which we can't always count on, but we do know when we put it on and when we put this product on in the fall, we're going to get enough snow to melt to activate it. So again, we're targeting our early germinating weeds like our kochia, foxtail barley, our stinkweed, our wild mustard, downy and Japanese brome, and wild oats. And again, those are just suppression on those grasses, but at least you do get some suppression with a totally different mode of action than we usually use on those grasses. So that group 15 is a new mode of action for those grasses. Again, it's the last pass across the field before you park the sprayer for the year. If some weeds have emerged, you can add glyphosate and surfactant. There's different rate structures on this. You need to be very careful with this one. So you need to watch there are 33 acres per jug if it's more than 3% organic matter. If it's less than 3% organic matter, then it's a 40 acre per jug rate. Your spring crops are field corn, field peas, lentils, soybeans, sunflowers, and spring wheat, but not durum. So when you've used this product, do not apply any authority 480 to wheat in the spring, and do not apply authority supreme. So you have to be careful with what you're putting on the crops next year. Just be aware of that. And do not apply if the pH is greater than 7.8 or if the organic matter is less than 1% or greater than 7%. So just a little bit more with this management with this product. Other products we can use are 2,4-D, MCPA. In the fall, generally 4 ounces would be safe, no more than 6, and that's because of overlaps. We have to be careful with our overlaps, and we have to be careful with early spring seeding. But generally, the work's been done. And if you look at that, even in tank mix partners with other products like something like a Black Hawk, 4 ounces would be safe, but you don't want to go much higher than that. Our spring burn off and our pre-harvest products, basically, we get asked about this all the time. So our AIM, our Bermoxanil, our Conquer, our Goldwing, our Heat, our Thunderhawk. Normally these aren't registered for the fall, so consult your product reps whether or not they can be used in the fall ahead of spring seeding. I guess technically some people, there's the feeling that, well, if they can be used pre-seed, ahead of crops in the spring, then why can't we use them in the fall? But again, they don't technically have a fall application label on them. They're not registered for that. So again, you'd need to consult your product reps. So I think that's all I had for this. And if you want, Lionel, you can take the screen back. And if there's questions, I can take them.
Okay, just leave your screen up there for right now. And we do have a few questions. I guess the first one is your best recommendation for control of brownleaf mallow.
Honestly, Fluorastulam is a really good product for that. And I know we do have a lot of group 2 resistance, not so much in the mallow. That's the problem with using a product like Fluorastulam, is that we do have so many other weeds that are developing resistance to it. But that's probably one of the best products to use on that, on roundleaf mallow, is Fluorastulam. So that's in a lot of products. It's in a lot of products. So ideally, if you were using that, you'd be using that in either a tank mix or a premix with another group that would take care of, some of those group 2 resistant weeds. But yeah, that'd be my go-to product on that one.
Okay. When I do a tank mix with, for example, heat and glyphosate, is the heat burning the plant down too fast for the glyphosate to do its job?
No, it shouldn't. It will be like normally you need for annual weeds, you'd need 24 hours for that, for the glyphosate to work. And if you're going after perennial weed, then yes, then you'd need more time. So I guess I guess I shouldn't have answered that so quickly when I said no. I guess you need to look at the weeds that you have. If you have a lot of perennial weeds, then I wouldn't be using a heat and glyphosate product. I would be going with something more like a distinct or some other products, depending on what, if you're going to have a cereal on that field next year, you've got lots of products to use that can do a really good job. If you've just got like a lighter infestation of weeds or not a lot of perennial weeds in there, then a heat and glyphosate in the fall, does a good job. The heat does work fairly quickly, but it doesn't work so quickly that the glyphosate doesn't work. We know with other products in the past when they were tank mixed with glyphosate, like they just work too fast, and the glyphosate doesn't get a chance to get into the roots. But that is a registered tank mix, so you just have to watch the weeds you're going after. I wouldn't use that tank mix if I'm going after a lot of perennials, because you do want to give that glyphosate more time.
Okay. Can we apply 2,4-D in the field this fall and then plant canola next spring?
Yeah, I guess that it depends how you're doing that, and you really have to watch the rates. But if you look at something like a Black Hawk label, then there hasn't, then it's got, there are products that has 2,4-D in it, and so that one can be used. So yeah, that's a question I don't know that there's research on that, but anecdotally, I know there was a fair bit of research done in Saskatchewan, and my counterpart there, Clark Brenzel, had done some work with the University of Saskatchewan, and they had used rates into the fall, and they had gotten away with it. The thing is, you really have to watch soil types. On lighter soils, there was some more damage. There was more damage definitely on the overlaps. And so again, if you are going to be using those products in the fall, you have to stick to really low rates. So again, the 4 ounces, no more than 6, because of the overlaps, and especially if you're going early in the spring. And again, watch your soil types as well. So there isn't really any research that I know of that we can show you on that, but anecdotally, there has been some work done, and it was generally deemed to be safe, but you have to be careful with it. So it's not something I would recommend. I think there are other products you could use instead that would be safer. So I think that you need to be careful with that.
I think one of the things I thought I've seen with it is that, especially for the no-till guys, the residue on the soil as the plants were coming up in the spring, or after you planted it and the plants started coming up in the spring, if you had the areas with too high a 2,4-D, they were picking up the 2,4-D as they were growing.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I know, yeah, I've heard that. Again, I'm not sure that that's been tested. That's been like through actual research, but I've heard that anecdotally. We do know that this is something you can get away with in the spring. You can get away with putting 2,4-D and MCPA on in the spring and going and seeding canola. It's not something we recommend. Basically, we would say don't do it, but you do need to give it time to dissipate in the soil. So if I was going to be doing that, I'd be doing it as early as possible. If we have a good month of growing now, or even a good few weeks of growing, I would be a lot less worried about any of that residue still being there. But the later you leave it, I would not want to be putting it on late into October, right before freeze up type thing. I'd be wanting to do that as early as possible.
Okay. Another one here. Are there different, I guess, varieties / types of kochia? Seems like plants are different in some areas.
Oh, yeah, there's a lot of outcrossing on that. There's a lot of outcrossing on that, and they do look so different. You'll get pictures in, and it doesn't look like kochia, and it is kochia, but there's just lots of different types, lots of different. It's not what we call a homozygous population, because there's so much outcrossing, and so there is different types. There is different. We know we're starting to see a lot more herbicide resistance with the group 4s. We're seeing some, we know all of it's group 2 resistant. We know a lot of it is group 9 resistant. We know quite a lot of it is, or not quite a lot, but we're starting to see some dicamba resistance and some fluroxypyr resistance as well. hearing about group 14 resistance everywhere else. So we know it's a very different, these populations are very different looking. And so we know that I think some of it is because we've got resistances coming at us from all different groups. And so some of the plants that are resistant to more of these groups, obviously we're going to start to see those ones grow more. So I think that you're seeing populations change. And so some of it is looking different than it used to based on, these resistance issues that we're dealing with.
Yeah, and it's just going to maybe another comment. Different leaf type I'm seeing on some of the plants I'm seeing from other leaf types. Definitely, maybe even a different color. I don't know. Are you seeing that too, Kim?
Well, sometimes it is red, because plants in that family can have very, very red stems, and other times it's just grass green. And then sometimes the leaves are really sharp and pointy looking, and then other times they're not. And it almost looks like a Russian thistle leaf, which they're related. Just a lot of different variations in growth type and architecture of the plant and leaf shape. And we're seeing a lot of it changing. And I think, again, because we've got it's just changing all the time, and it does outcross, so you do get mixed populations when you see that. I just want to, sorry, I misspoke earlier when I talked about 2,4-D and I had said Black Hawk. You can't use Black Hawk ahead of canola. Sorry about that. That came to mind and I had made a mistake on that one. But when we're talking about 2,4-D ahead of canola, that is not a product to use ahead of canola. Just wanted to make sure I wasn't thinking when I said that. Sorry.
Good. No, good point. And just one last question that just came in. Dandelion, better to control in the fall or the spring?
Ideally, a perennial weed, the best time to control the weed is when the kids go back to school in the fall. So anytime September on control that one in the fall. Springtime is a terrible time to be trying to go after perennial weeds because they've got such a huge root system. When we're looking at big quackgrass patches, when we're looking at big dandelions, they have a huge root system to come from. Dandelions have that massive taproot on them. So going after them in the spring, you need a ton more chemical. It doesn't work well no matter how much you throw at it. So you've got to do something for a perennial weed. Basically, anytime from September on is your best timing. Now, some of these weeds, though, like we do talk about, dandelion obviously comes from seed as well. And so we do have spring germinating dandelions. So, those ones we can target in the spring, but our perennials, the ones that are going to be regrowing from an existing rootstock, those ones, the best time is to target them in the fall.
Okay, and one more. Tillage after spray application. How long should we wait?
Yeah. Minimum 3 days. Well, I guess if you're using a systemic product, something like a glyphosate, because pretty much anything we're putting on in the fall, we're tank mixing with glyphosate. So we want to be able to let that glyphosate or the other systemic products, if the other products are systemic, then we want that to get into the root system. So you'd want minimum 3 days. Ideally, you'd want longer. The longer you can leave it, the better. But you need to give it time to get into that root system and work. So by that point, you will not see, depending what your tank mix partner is with, if we're talking glyphosate, you may not see anything on the upper part of the plant. You won't see, that's early to be seeing any leaf starting to die or anything like that. You really won't see that, but you've got to give it time. And so I'd give it as long as I could. Again, I'd like to see 5 days or more, but I think anytime after 3 days you could go if you had to. But I think at this stage in the game, we've still got lots of time, and I think you can delay that tillage a little bit longer. I'd really like to see 5 days or so to really get that to work, but that would be ideal.
Okay, and what about spring or fall treatment of foxtail barley?
Yeah, that's a tough one because foxtail barley is just harder to get. But it's a perennial. So when those clumps come up in the spring, now it's a short-lived perennial. So we do have lots of new ones coming all the time. So you can get a few of those ones in the spring, but you need to be targeting that. Now, if it's been if it's been obviously through harvest, it's been cut off and you know, we need to have that regrow a bit. But with it being a perennial weed, that is one that we have to try to go out in the fall because those clumps in the spring, they start growing so early and they're really hard to get. There is a good system for foxtail barley in the spring if you're going into wheat. So I'm a fan. I've seen it work really well, the Olympus system. So you can use Olympus, which is a pre, but you need to follow that up with a group 2 in crop, something like a Vero or a Velocity or another group 2 product. But that is a good system too if you do have foxtail barley that you didn't get a chance to control in the fall but it's only for spring wheat. That's a good system to go after it in the spring. Otherwise, going after foxtail barley in the spring is really doesn't work. It doesn't work well. It's almost a lost cause. It's really hard to do, hard to get in the spring.
Okay, and right now when you go into foxtail patches, most of it looks like it's gone to seed and drying up. So it's
Yeah,
the new growth from
yeah.
the bottom is what you're looking for?
Yeah, you'd want to have new growth on that. Like I said, that's a tough one to get this late in the fall. A pre-harvest works well on that if you've had a pre-harvest application on those fields, but that one does die down so much. But if it has been cut off and you are like, you know, through harvest and you get some regrowth, you need that green regrowth. But a lot of those patches are very dead looking now. So if it's brown, like you have to have green material. So that's a tough one this late in the year unless you've got some regrowth. But that's one where sometimes a pre-harvest does a better job at it, or an early fall application, like, you know, a month ago type thing would have been maybe the best time. But that one's a tough one when we start getting late.
Okay. Should I go after biennial wormwood in the fall?
Well, most biennial wormwood actually isn't biennial. Some of it is, but most of it isn't. So most of it's actually in a spring germinating weed. That's a tough one because there's so many products. It's not resistant. There's just a lot of products that just don't work on it well. If you do have small ones, or maybe if you've had bigger ones that have been cut off and there is some regrowth, or it is acting like a true biennial where you have see, it can act as a winter annual, it can act as a biennial, and it can act as a spring annual. So the name is misleading. It's not necessarily biennial. In fact, rarely is it biennial. It's lots of times it's a winter annual or a spring annual. But if you do have a plant there that has green growing tissue, yes, then you could get that in the fall. But you have to watch. A lot of them really aren't a biennial. So that rosette, again, if that rosette is still green, if it is in its biennial phase, which again, some of them are, but not a lot of them, but and that rosette is still green, then yes, you could go after that in the fall.
Okay, well, that's the questions for the presentation now, but I think I've got one for you on the crop scouting panel here. So thanks, Kim. That was some really good information and there were some really good questions that came in. So thank you. So the first one, and I think I might have sent this picture to you yesterday, Kim. Weed ID, what's growing there?
Oh, that looks like good old stinkweed to me. When it is that big, if you don't do anything about that in the fall, that is going to be so big in the spring. But come springtime, there's no point going after something. If it's that big this fall, unless you're going after it super early in the spring, those things will grow and set seed very, very early. And so in the spring, when you go after plants, the stinkweed plants, lots of times it's just revenge spraying. You really need to get a good handle on that this fall. Now, stinkweed's never really an issue in crop, causing a ton of yield loss or causing a ton of problems. It's a winter annual, and it usually is really big in the fall and then really big in the spring, and then it kind of, you know, sets seed and it's kind of done. So I'm not too concerned about it in as an in crop weed, whereas some of the other, you know, winter annuals like night flower and catch fly or narrow leaf talk spirit or something, those ones can be a problem. In crop. But the thing is, again, we don't know what our moisture situation is going to be. A lot of us, we've had a little bit of rain late recently, but generally, you know, we're more drier than wet. And we are always concerned about replenishing that soil moisture and not having a lot of that moisture lost. So I'd be, you know, that's a good sized plant, and that's going to be taking up a lot of moisture, a lot of nutrients. And so, yeah, if you were going to go after that one I'd be going after in the fall, because by springtime, it's just too late for those guys.
Yeah, I agree. I know. I just when I got the picture yesterday, I went, boy, that's a healthy stinkweed. But
Yeah,
it
yeah,
almost throws you because usually you don't see them that healthy in the fall.
yeah,
But
yeah.
but
No, they get big and green, and they just get going so fast in the spring. But then
mhm.
yeah.
Good. Okay. The next question that I've been getting a lot of and talking to a lot of producers about is our canola, our straight cut canola, and how green the straw is staying. And this might one of the questions a producer asked me, Kim, is he sprayed heat and glyphosate on it, and that was one of the things he was wondering is maybe that the heat killed the top part of the plant. The canola plants are huge this year. And he was wondering if the heat basically stopped the glyphosate from doing all of its work. Any comment on that?
Well, there's a couple of issues there. With a big canola plant, coverage is hard to get. So we're basically you wanted to get that heat on those stems as well. And we've got a big canola crop, you needed to use lots of water to get that heat and that glyphosate into that whole canopy. And that's really hard to do on a big crop. That's hard to do. And again, too, how much time did he give it? You still need to give heat and glyphosate a decent amount of time. Like it tightens up your time or shortens your time to harvest than using just straight glyphosate for harvest, for harvest management. But you still need to give it some time, and especially, we're later in the season now, and so you're still needing 10 to 14 days or more, depending on the weather. And we've had some down here in Carmen, anyways. We've had some rainy days, and so that slows everything down that much longer. So I think you have to make sure you're giving it enough time before those combines start rolling in that field. And in the first place, you had to make sure you had really good coverage when you've got a big crop and trying to get that spray on all of it, especially getting that heat to those stems. They're vertical, mostly vertical, and they're just hard. They're a hard to hit target. So that does become a bit of an issue in a really big crop. You have to make sure your water volume is good. You got the right nozzles. Your speed, your spraying speed is fairly slow, because coverage is absolutely crucial in that case.
And David, I think you're on a comment came in is that they were thinking that the powdery mildew was stopping the glyphosate from getting into the plant.
That could very well be. It is covering the surface of the stems in particular, and it would interfere with uptake. However, well, there's always a however, and that I don't know how to deal with that question really. Just to say that the presence of powdery mildew, if it's really significant, is going to interfere with the uptake of the herbicide.
Yeah, I agree. And it's how long, Kim, does glyphosate have before it's done kind of gone as far as it's going to go in a plant? Like, if you spray, is it, within 24 hours, if it hasn't got into the plant yet, is it going to still be there, or is it
That I don't know if I can give you an actual timeline on that, but generally, you don't have a long time. It's not going to last for days and days and days. Glyphosate actually translocates really well into a plant compared to other products. So it actually it's one of the better ones for getting into a plant quickly. Um, but yeah, I wouldn't be able to say. I would think, honestly, though, I would think like if you've sprayed and, once the spray is dry and the spray droplets have dried and stuff, it's on the surface of the leaf. It doesn't last a very long time after that. It needs to get into that leaf fairly quickly. Um, it's not like it will reactivate after a while, like a soil applied herbicide can reactivate if it's sitting there waiting to be activated by moisture or something like that. The products that the systemic products and even those products that we spray on the top of on the plant material, they don't hang around for a very long time. Basically, once those spray droplets are dried, they're not really not a lot can get back into the plant unless the leaf is wetted again through something like can only dew or something like that. But realistically, once those spray droplets are dry, you're not getting much more into that plant.
Okay, yeah, and from talking to producers, I guess the guys that did do some swathing, those are the guys that are getting it in the bin a lot faster than the guys that are left it standing right now. That's for sure. I think one of the things talking to producers too is that is you need to be harvesting during the dry parts of the day. So when the dew starts to get on, your losses increase big time, and try not to over thrash. One guy was telling me that if you you're too aggressive with your thrashing, you're breaking it down, and you're getting too dirty of a sample too. So that's another thing, I guess, if guys are still looking at harvesting some of this canola that's standing and is green, and for a lot of guys, I think swathing is past the point already too, because a lot of it is seed is dry and the pods are dry. So I think that's kind of the we need to just let it dry down standing now. Okay, I think that's the questions that came in for today. I'm going to go through a few slides just to kind of finish up for the day. And one of the ones when I started the crop talk off today, we were talking about harvest progression. And when you look at where we are right now, as a province, we're 76% done. A major crop out there right now is canola and soybeans, I would say. I think more and more guys are trying the soybeans. They're kind of a little deceiving. They're almost a little bit like the canola. They've got some green to them, but the sample is dry enough that guys are going. So I think we'll see more and more soybeans coming off in the next little while here. And I think canola might slow down a bit until guys can get it to the point where it'll be easier to go through the machines. But in general, we had great progress over the past week here, and it's only gonna get better as we see the next few days here, as producers are going to get back into the field when we get some warm weather and some sun out here. Seen this from weather logistics, and it's talking about the this Thursday they're calling for rain, and I think it's getting less and less all the time. They were talking Thursday, Friday, but now they're basically just talking Thursday, and it seems like it's going to be going more to the north. So I think the part of the province that's still got a fair bit to harvest is going to be not getting a lot of rain. Crop Connect conference, they're planning it, and this is the dates: February 14th and 15th in Winnipeg at the Victoria Inn. So mark those dates down. There'll be more information coming out about that in the future. The crop residue burning program, just a reminder that if you're looking at burning straw, you need to check if we're in a burning day, and make sure that you're checking the website, and the website is right there for checking that out, as well as our hay listing. Talking to more producers that are starting to look around and might be a little bit short on feed, so people are looking to buy. So if you got some to sell, give the MASC number or Manitoba Ag number a call, and they can help you get your hay listed. Our crop extension specialist for the province, if you got any questions, feel free to call any one of us. We're around and able to help you with all your needs. Our livestock people, again, they're throughout the province, and if you're looking at fall grazing things and just preparing your feed ration for the coming year, these people can give you a hand. There's our MASC locations throughout the province and the numbers. I thought I'd put this on as we're getting closer to, some guys are getting closer to finishing harvest. We're going to have harvest production reports, and this information lets you figure out how much grain is in your bin. So this would be for the flat kind of portion of the bin, and the next slide would be for your cone on top and your cone on the bottom if it's a hopper bin. So this will just help you figure out that the amounts that are in the bin, and this way you can get better recording to when you fill out your reports. And with that, I'd like to thank Kim for presenting today. Again, a lot of good information. And join us next week, October the 4th. Pretty sure we're going to be talking some soils, and Marla is going to be on, so I'm pretty sure. So we're going to have a good presentation there. So thanks again for attending, and see you next week.